in 2020 in kind of this COVID time. So it's been, if you can believe it, 7 months since March. I see some of you shaking your head. I feel the same way. Since the pandemic started, and kind of shifting the way we think about workforce, think about work in general, what we're doing. For a lot of collaboratives, the work kind of was put on hold, but for some others who were able to kind of utilize their TPM collaboratives, these kind of employer collaboratives, to move forward in responding to some of their workforce challenges and rebuilding some of the different things that were going on in their communities. So we wanted to bring together technically 4 TPM practitioners, but one's going to play the moderator role, to talk about kind of what they've been able to do in this time with their TPM collaboratives and where they've seen both those successes and challenges, and hopefully that can be helpful for all of you. Please put questions in the chat that they can answer to kind of think through some of your challenges as well. But with that, I will turn it over to Peter Beard, who will be our moderator for this time.
So thanks, Nikki. I appreciate it. And obviously you can see the fellow panelists with me, with Megan and Byron and Deb. And what I thought I would do is set a little bit of context and remind folks that back in May, Jason presented a framework for us to think about how we might use TPM in kind of an economic, downturn. And Nikki has provided the slide. And so this is just a reminder of that. I'm going to ask folks to quickly introduce themselves, kind of the organization that they work with, the role they play there, when they completed the academy, and then active collaborative. So we'll do this really quickly, and then we'll get in some of the questions. So why don't we start with you, Deb?
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. Deborah Majeski, Manager of Workforce Development at DTE Energy, excuse me, and also the chair for the Data and Standards, one of the pillars for the Michigan Energy Workforce Development Consortium. And I finished my training this past summer, which was very nice, doing it virtually. So thank you, it was a great opportunity.
And then Byron.
Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to be here. I'm the CEO of Tampa Bay Works, obviously from Tampa, Florida. We actually started investigating TPM back in 2018 and formalized our 2 collaboratives in early 2019, with the help of Joe Quick, I should add. I started my training actually in February of this year because I joined the collaborative after our initial executive director had some health issues and resigned. So I kind of picked up midstream. And then, so my first session was in person. That was in late February, and then COVID hit. So we switched to virtual right in the middle, and I completed in January. So not only did COVID impact my work, but also my training.
And then Megan, who's on the other end of all of this, she started virtually at the, when it started. So why don't you share with us what you're up to in Wilmington,
Yeah,
Megan?
absolutely. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Megan Lewis, Director of Programs with Cape Fear Collective. We are a fairly new 501c3 based in Wilmington, North Carolina. I completed the North Carolina Academy in January, so just prior. We might have been one of the last fully in-person cohorts to graduate, but have since, as far as active collaboratives, I'm going to go out on a limb to say we have 2 active, one further along in the construction space, thanks to a partnership with the Carolinas Association of General Contractors, and then also in the beginning stages of technology IT collaborative.
So, as the panel gets started, I wanted to kind of reference back to the survey work, which is one of the challenges that obviously everyone confronts, is how to kind of continue the active engagement of employers. And so Byron, you kind of shared that you started this in a virtual world, and I think you held a virtual manufacturing boot camp. Can you share a little bit about that and any words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom. Okay. So first of all, the boot camps were not virtual. These for manufacturing, so we focused on hands-on. So these were in-person workshops. We held the, what they are is, it was started out with a one-day workshop, which got people interested in manufacturing and really gauged, how interested they were. And if they were interested in continuing on, and we were interested in having them, we would invite them to a 2-week boot camp where we would train them in some basic manufacturing skills. And then also, and most importantly, vet for soft skills. So, dependability, punctuality, collaboration, ability to learn, all those types of things. These were for entry-level machine operator and production assembler positions, by the way. And so when COVID hit, we had our first, our pilot workshop and boot camp in January. COVID hit and everything came to a screeching halt. So in terms of the boot camps, because we couldn't meet in person. So my first word of wisdom is how we kept going is we just kept communicating, right? So we were holding monthly meetings of the collaborative, and we decided to continue holding those meetings. So we just continued on. In those meetings, we worked together to really try to figure out and communicate how all the manufacturers were doing through the COVID crisis, when it first hit. Because manufacturing is considered an essential industry here, they continued to work through the early stages of the pandemic. And so we worked together on how to, number one, bring the workshops back, how to social distance, how to train, how to keep people safe. And so by the time July or June rolled around, we were ready with the help of the collaborative and through communication to resume the boot camps. And so we did. Unfortunately, that was right in the middle of the second spike here in Florida. But again, because we kept communicating, and the second word of wisdom I'll say is adapt. We adapted what we were doing based on advice we got from the manufacturers. We held the workshops anyway. And so we just kept going. We built on that momentum. We communicated heavily. And now we are just started our 4th boot camp. They've been very successful with the exception of the first one back. That was the one that happened during the spike. It was just weird. And we only had about, I think 10% of people were hired out of that boot camp. But we're back now to 80+% of people being hired out of the boot camp. So we're back on track. Again, 2 things: continue to communicate and use that communication to guide your strategy for adapting what you're doing to meet the employer needs.
So Byron, there was a question in here. How did you do the recruitment of the participants in the boot camp? And then I'm assuming that the industry and employers were the ones that helped advise you on how to do it safely, since they had already figured out how to do it.
That's exactly right. So the social distancing, the employers played heavily in that. We ended up manufacturing plexiglass workstations, right, to keep people socially distanced, because the manufacturers said we still need people to work in groups. So we had to figure out a way to do that safely. So in addition to wearing masks, and we actually built plexiglass stations. In terms of how we recruited by advertising. It's not exactly advertising, but news reporting, so TV reports. Here in this area, we were particularly interested in anybody that was hiring, because our hospitality industry got hit hard. And so we had a number of news stations that were hungry for anybody hiring, and our manufacturers were still hiring. Even though they were hiring less, they were hiring. So we use that heavily. We also have a mobile billboard that we use, and we park that outside of Walmart and, every place you could imagine. And we also did a postcard mailing campaign.
So Megan, you got to start it in the middle of kind of being virtual, and so would be interested in kind of how did you get employers, interested in launching and meeting and kind of starting that work. And I know you've got construction and are thinking about IT.
Yeah, great question. So we were fortunate, actually, as I was wrapping up the TPM Academy, that our region had already put a plan in place to survey more broadly in a 6-county region in southeastern North Carolina the needs of employers in regards to business functions, skills, and also their view or confidence of their local talent pipeline. We were not so fortunate on the launch date, so we launched that survey Friday, March 13th, and North Carolina stay-at-home order was that weekend. But actually, thankfully, we were really pleased to still hit our goal target of about 500 responses. And for southeastern North Carolina, that was a significant, subset of employers that replied regarding their talent needs. Also, that survey found that even, it was really kind of the first real-time COVID data that we had and we're working to respond to, and honestly was pretty surprised by the significant amount of growth that was still planned in the majority of our industries. So we really use that as kind of a flashlight to say some of these industries may be more primed for TPM than others, which led us to construction first off. Not only were they anticipating high growth, but they also rated the confidence in their local talent pipeline lowest out of all the other industries. So a real gap there in what was being produced locally and what they needed to hire. And working with Carolina's Association of General Contractors to get the word out, the local Chamber of Commerce here and others, we've actually, so we've had 2 meetings, both virtual, are trying to keep them on a monthly cadence. And so far, kind of engagement has been really high and positive. I think, especially with construction, like getting them in and engaged during the winter months so that we can kind of gear up for what's going to be a busy kind of spring and summer for them is important. And I think moving forward to increase that, to continue that engagement, like really making sure we're using their time wisely in the hour and a half that we're together, and less just presentation time, and how to keep a very highly facilitated conversation going so that we can quickly identify some specific pain points. And then similar for IT, the needs were just so great that they kind of came to us and said, what do we do with this information and how do we build upon it? So we're about to embark on demand planning with a few key employers in that industry.
Good. So Deb, obviously you're an employer and you had to confront the challenge of summer internships in a virtual world, and that seemed like one of the things you were doing before, but now you had to make a pivot. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the importance of that, keeping that in terms of developing the pipeline that you've built over time?
Thanks, Peter. You're absolutely right. When we started down this journey, we've been for a number of years offering an internship program in our summertime. We have it this year. We actually had over 500 college and high school students that were slated to start with us. And excuse me, when COVID hit, we were like, whoa, this is a face-to-face experience. We want hands-on experience for these interns so they can really understand the importance of the energy industry. And so when many companies started pausing all of their summer programs, we came together with the collaborative of community partners and also within DTE and said, how can we do this? How can we do this in a way that's going to be successful for our intern, most importantly, but for our companies and our partnerships? And so we started down that journey, and it was kind of scary. We would have weekly meetings going like, can we really do this? How are we going to do this? And so we started figuring out what are the key elements that we actually needed. And so we knew that within our partnerships, we partnered with Go Detroit Young Talent, we partnered with Educational Data Systems, we get partnered with Michigan Works, and we said, let's come together. We really want to break it up, still having some hands-on business unit experience along with career development. And so we put 33% of our program into career development, where the students were having classes virtually that were helping them prepare with their interviewing skills, reading about how to prepare in different career paths that they were interested in. They were learning about how to write better, more articulate. They had learned how to do elevator speeches. And then when we connected them with the business units, we made sure that we partnered with our business unit leaders first. We helped them think through, how can you create a business unit experience virtually? And how are you going to show them that job role or what's involved in that job role? So we partnered with the Henry Ford Community College. We are partnered with them for a pre-apprenticeship program. So we were able to do virtual tours. We were able to show them every single pathway that was created at this community college to help prepare them. So when they left our internship, they would have a place to get started from a preparation perspective. We had Discover Skilled Trade videos. We had 9 videos that we were able to introduce them to help them understand virtually how do they prepare for that particular job role in the industry. And then we made, a pretty dynamic agenda, if I may. We had motivational Mondays and TikTok Tuesdays, giving them 30 minutes of fitness each week. That one I thought that's going to be a reach. But when you're having students who are at home, and many of these students may not have had air conditioning, right? And we're thinking to ourselves, how are we going to keep them engaged? And they enjoyed the fitness class. And we did that virtually. People would go on camera and they would do their exercising. It was pretty cool. Then we had the interactive Thursdays, and it came to a point where they said, can we have that time? We want to run that meeting. And we said, hey, hands off. You guys take that time. You take that 30 minutes each week and you work through what it is you want to learn. And they really started to bond as a group. So we had a calendar. It was pretty powerful. We monitored the check-in, when they came into each team site, each team meeting, we took roll call. So we were making sure that everybody was engaged. And then we evaluated. We evaluated after each event, and we evaluated at the end to really see where those opportunities were to stand something up again in the future.
So this is directed to all 3 of you. You've each kind of looked at, what has happened to the various, industries that you're supporting, which means you had a slowdown or stop, and now you're kind of ramping up. And you're doing some demand planning. How are the employers thinking as they do this demand planning in terms of trying to anticipate, and I think Megan kind of talked about it, an increase in demand in spring, which is probably still uncertain. So I'd just be interested in how your various employers are trying to navigate this uncertainty.
I'll start with that. So interestingly enough, as we were communicating, I took a lot of informal polls, typically online polls or real-time polls during our meetings. And it was interesting that, and I work with healthcare and manufacturers, by the way. The healthcare people looked at things completely different than the manufacturers. But the manufacturers looked at COVID as, of course, a terrible thing. However, they saw it as a way to attract more people to manufacturing. And so it was interesting. We said, well, so what can we do? We know that the workforce shortages, demand is going to come back. The workforce shortage is going to be a big issue again. And so, what can we do in the meantime? So we decided to look at skilled talent positions because we started with entry level. So we began the work during COVID or during the initial stages of COVID to gather information regarding what they will need when they really start to ramp up hiring again for skilled talent. And we identified 3 positions, and we are closing up on that right now. We kind of took our time with that one, but we're finishing that work up right now.
Megan or Deb?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there. I think specifically as we look at IT, when I first graduated, the TPM Academy, being the growing fintech industry that we have here, many of those members kind of the founding members too of Cape Fear Collective, the organization I work for, certainly went to them and was kind of trying to have some fact-finding meetings and see if TPM would work in the financial technology space, and was hearing a lot about hiring freezes, a lot of growth coming, but just not hiring for those jobs yet. fast forward, the 7 months from COVID, and, one financial tech industry employer in particular now is 50 software developer hires like in the next 3 to 6 months. And so I think those industries in particular, Live Oak Bank is headquartered here. It's one of the largest SBA lender in the country. And so new roles coming out of that, and many of them having to pivot and place their expertise even within kind of their clients' businesses so that, they can continue work as usual. So certainly seeing kind of a shift, especially in technology as far as jobs are concerned moving forward.
Peter, while I was going through the academy this past spring, I was also launching what I would call my first collaborative meeting. Although I've done a lot of the parts of the academy toolkit with other projects, but this one, I would say officially, was one where I really connected with DTE and our chief procurement officers, trying to figure out what project, what area of focus are we going to do. And in this large collaborative, we have, we have the hotel industry, we got mortgage companies, we have automotive, we have healthcare. So we have 12 different key companies that said, yes, we're willing to be a part of this collaborative. Let's pick a job role. And so here we are at the heels of COVID, and we decided customer service was the key job role, because that was quickly changing from a call center environment to a home environment. And so we began that journey. And when we started to do our homework, we realized that that's the 6th largest job in the state of Michigan, and it's going to have a growth of 12,000 up till 2028. So we said that is the key one that we want to work on. Now, how can we work on that collaborative and collect that demand data from our companies? And we were able to successfully do that in that downtime, right? So we were able to get the right resources to collect our survey information. We are now working through our strategies to start figuring out how we're going to build a talent pipeline, but also to build a competency model. We want to have a credential with customer service. So for us, we were able to really look at that demand across the state, say, we're going to capitalize on this and see how we're going to learn how to do it differently and be more efficient at it.
So you all have hinted at, this role that technology is playing, both either is kind of just fintech itself, or the reality is, technology has allowed things to go remote at some level. And I know in manufacturing, automation is showing up more and more. What are the changes you're seeing in terms of kind of the role technology plays? And I think we have about 3 or 4 minutes left for the panel.
Well, I'll just take half a second here. For us, doing the summer youth program, we created a toolkit for other companies and organizations to use and leverage if they want to stand up a program. Also, helping them understand what some of our challenges were with technology, making sure that all of our students had the technology. We removed barriers of not having internet, giving them the tools that they needed to set up for success. So that in itself is really monumental to help us get to that next level with delivering training or work from home.
Yeah, and for us, we've quickly, as we've identified hard skills and soft skills, and there's a pretty good delineation between the two, there's a new group in the middle, which are technology skills. And some of those are basic skills like Excel and Office and whatever, which can be more like almost foundational skills, versus others that are more occupational skills. And so we're determining through another group right now that I'm working with, do we take these technology skills and divide them into foundational, like soft skills versus occupational skills, or do we create its own category like people like Burning Glass have done?
Megan, anything?
Yeah, I would just, similar to Deb, we quickly needed to get a cohort together. So we relied heavily on a lot of our corporate partners to hardwire some of our remote learning sites. And really, I think just the evolution of technology and this pandemic in particular, as I'm sure it has in many communities, really shed a light on the lack of connectivity and access we have, not only in Wilmington, which is kind of this hub city, if you will, in southeastern North Carolina, but certainly in more of our rural parts of the state. And just needing that to be a baseline moving forward, that technology and access is there. was pretty critical. And so hopefully some innovations coming out of that.
Because I think it is going to be challenging. I was talking to one of our CHROs in our health systems, and because technology now has been embedded in terms of scheduling and other things, those receptionists in the doctor's offices, she's trying to figure out, how do I redeploy them in a very different way, which I think gets to the point of how do we think about customer service and, you know, the upskilling that's there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is, you know, technology, these skills are transferable. And so they're becoming more and more part of our work. We're getting ready to embark on a project to look at transferable skills and match them from COVID impacted industries to high demand occupations, right? So that we can help COVID impact or COVID displaced workers get work. Those tech skills are highly transferable, you know, which is why we need to delve into what are they and how important and which ones can transfer.
So Nikki has got the hook out and she's pulling me off stage. Any final kind of comments and advice for the folks here, and then we'll close out.
Well, this is just Deborah, and I just want to say, if you have an opportunity to connect with your consortium, if you have a consortium in your state, do that, because like us here in Michigan, we've got a very fast moving now consortium that's going to help us understand what the demand planning needs to be for the state. Utilize them in any capacity you can.
For me, it's just communicate as often as you can, especially between meetings, whether you're meeting, you know, monthly or bi-monthly, whatever. Communicating between meetings has been the difference for me.
Yeah, I'll just add, and have learned this recently in a little network of conversations we have with other folks in this community. You know, don't be afraid to rely heavily on your employers. I think as someone launching to kind of at the start, there was a hesitation or a fear of mine that I'd be asking too much or to only have some, you know, super high packed agendas. And of course that's important, but it's a work in progress, and you know, just sharing the work to get the surveys in and get the right questions answered. And so rely on your employers for some of that insight.
So Byron, Megan, Deb, thanks so much. You've been great. And I think one of the big takeaways is building the relationship allows the collaborative to sustain no matter what the up or down is. So thanks again. Nikki, back to you.
Thanks, everyone. And now we're going to turn it